Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Criterion Collection review series, where I'm going through my personal Criterion collection and reviewing every movie in spine number order. And we are finishing the Three Colors trilogy off by reviewing the third film. We'll also be giving my general thoughts on the trilogy and try to make some esoteric and a little pretentious connections here. But today's film we're reviewing is Red. And Red, I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the series, but Red, I remember being one of my favorite, if not my favorite, from this trilogy. And after having seen it again, rewatched it, really chewed on it, I think it is still my favorite. And if it's not my absolute favorite from the trilogy, it's tied with Blue. It's way up there. And it's fascinating to me because Red is definitely the least straightforward of any of the films. Where Blue does have a narrative, but is a little bit more metaphorical, visually striking. White is less visually striking, less metaphorical, more straightforward, more of a comedy, more traditional. Red is very mysterious. There's barely a plot in the film. There is barely any real actions. It's more of almost like a philosophical and moral debate that is exploring themes and trying to capture feelings rather than anything else. And yet, to me, it is incredibly engaging thanks to the performances and the very kinetic directing style, which I am not used to seeing from Kieslowski. But to get into it, the plot, what little there is about Irene Jacobs' character, who is sort of a fashion model, who has a very overly protective boyfriend who is out away on a trip. One night while driving, she accidentally runs over a dog, and in finding the owner, discovers this old man who's actually tapping into people's phone calls in his neighborhood and listening to them. And they sort of get into a moral debate about if that's okay, if it's not okay, and also to a moral debate about why people do certain things and take certain actions, and is it really to help others or is it really to help themselves? At the same time, there is this other character, a guy that lives around the corner from Irene Jacobs' character, who is sort of going through his own struggles, going through his own life, always just out of reach of our main plot line, but still there. And then by the end, it kind of connects in a weird and bizarre way. So within the French flag, red represents fraternity, which is definitely something explored in this film, as seen from the opening shot, which is an incredible sequence of the camera following in like fast motion a phone line as a call connects to another. And it goes underwater and through all these different pipes and all this crazy stuff. And actually, that sequence is what inspired the cover for the box set. It's sort of like this, but with less colors, more red, obviously. But it's so fascinating because it is an opening sequence about how technology connects us, and yet the call stops on a busy line. Again, but then also showing that lack of communication, that lack of connection, which, if this is following in Kieslowski's other films in the Three Colors trilogy, it is a reverse of what the theme is meant to say. So it is about fraternity, but it is questioning that brotherhood, that connection, that familial, that universality that we feel, and is trying to truly play with it. And the way it goes about that is through these sort of moral and philosophical debates that take up the center of the film, with Irene Jacobs' character sort of playing the naive, hopeful, optimistic character who believes in the good of people, the good of humanity, believes that we should not be spying on them, that if she does something, it's to help someone, it's not really for her own gain. But then you have the other character, played by Jean-Louis Trintignant, I hope I said his name right, who is sort of the older man. And he is on the opposite side. He's very pessimistic. He has a lot more experience. He has his past job was as a judge, so he's kind of seen the ugliness in the world, and himself has had a hard life, which is detailed later on in the film. So it makes sense that he would be less inclined to trust humanity, as it were, and really be on their side. And it makes for some interesting discussions that are visually interesting as well. And I would argue that Red is Kieslowski's well, maybe not in his entire filmography, but at least in the trilogy, is the most visually striking film. Where blue has a lot of blue filters, white also is very like a very blank, less expressive color. The amount of red in this movie is overwhelming at times. There is, in fact, this right here, which is taken from a famous shot or motif in the film, where Irene Jacobs' character poses for a gum billboard, and it's her face in silhouette or in profile over a red background. And it shows up multiple times in the film, and just she's always wearing red. There's just red everywhere. It's absolutely striking. But then the cinematography in general is way more kinetic and vibrant and alive. It's so fascinating. And I feel like that sort of reflects the focus of the film, where it is about life. And in that way, it becomes a bookend to the entire trilogy in a thematic and sensory way, where I feel like Red is looking at the connections that we all have, where a big theme in the film, a big idea explored, is repeating ideas and repeating lives. So the judge tells a story about his life where he had someone he was in love with and they cheated on him, and this whole thing, and just sort of recounting specific points in his life. And then this other male character that we don't know why he is connected to everyone else but is still being shown, he actually is repeating the same stuff that the judge was doing. He is a judge. He finds his girlfriend is cheating on him. He's just doing the same things over and over again. So the film explores this theme of maybe even doppelgangers or life repeating through this other character who is repeating the same steps as the judge. And almost looking at how humans repeat themselves and how they are destined to sort of go through the same motions. But there is this interesting idea of how things do change each time. Where, while there are repeated actions, repeated shots, repeated events, almost every time there is something a little bit different. Be it the way they play out, be it the characters involved, things of that nature. And so it is a film in a way that poses a lot of questions but never really answers them. But it works in the movie's favor because the performances are so good, the themes are so interesting, and the movie just sort of throws a bunch of things at the wall and says, figure it out. And not even figure it out, just think about it, And I think that's why it makes it such an engaging and fascinating film, is that it doesn't have any answers. It gets to the end and it goes, all right, be alone with your thoughts, discuss it, chew on it. And to me, that makes it a way more engaging and interesting and interactive film. One that I've thought about way more than white or blue, and it's really stuck with me. And I just think is absolutely amazing. And again, it's a beautiful looking film. The cinematography is great. The score is great. The performances are great. I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point. It's just a really fantastic movie that is great on its own. But then once you take it as the end of the trilogy, it becomes even more interesting. And I feel like each movie within the Three Colors trilogy sort of builds on top of each other. So Blue is mainly about freedom. It kind of gets into the other themes, but not necessarily. It's a very insulated story. White is about freedom and also about equality, dealing with the freedom of leaving or being forced out of a marriage, but then the equality of trying to get even, so to speak. And then Red is a film that deals with those two past themes and with the theme of fraternity, tying it back into freedom. And are we really free, not only from our human connections, but from time itself? Do we have any free agency or any free will? And then dealing with equality, are we ever on equal footing as each other? Do we ever reach the same levels as each other? And it's just so fascinating to sit and ponder, and I find it difficult to discuss this film, at least in this video, because you really need someone to bounce ideas off of and just get into it, which hopefully I would love for y'all to do in the comments. That'd be really great. But it's just such an amazing film and really shows the power of filmmaking to capture a mood and inspire a lot of contemplation about life. And I mean, ultimately, I think it is a positive and a universal film, looking at universal experiences. I don't know a good way to transition into this, but the ending of the film, I think it's a little divisive, possibly. where it ends by connecting all of the films in the trilogy very explicitly, where there is a ferry crash where I think it's hundreds of people die, but the only survivors are 6 of the characters from the past movies and 1 random character. And so we have all of the main characters from the past films who survived, who were all on that ferry at the same time. And so they are connected by this one experience, which I feel like if any other director had done this scene or chosen this moment, I feel like they would have shrunk the world. You know, the world of the films and of what they were exploring would have felt way more insulated, way more exclusive, you know, not as all-encompassing as they desire to be. But in the hands of Kieslowski, the ending of the film, to me, makes everything feel larger, feel more inclusive, feel more engaging and universal. Where there's sort of this idea to me that, you know, anyone could have survived that crash. By a random chance, anyone could have survived that crash. And we would have followed any of those characters, because everybody has an interesting story to tell. Everybody has their own things going on in life. Everyone experiences these feelings, these themes, these motifs. And everybody's version of it is unique. And it all depends on how you're willing to present it and how you're willing to perceive it. And I think there is ultimately that hopeful message. And in sort of an ironic way, the goal set out by the composer at the beginning of Blue of wanting to connect Europe and connect the world through music, I think Kieslowski has done visually, metaphorically, artistically, through his films. And well, sadly, these were his last films, which I believe he died a year after Red premiered, which is very sad, even though he had already announced that he was going to be retiring from filmmaking. But if there is any magnum opus, swan song that you could do, if there's any high bar for that, this is it. This trilogy is really just one of cinema's highlights. You know, not only just for being great films, but for being connected in very unique and interesting ways, and still being interesting to discuss and mysterious to this day. And I just think they're so absolutely fantastic. And well, speaking of fantastic, these special features on the disc are really great. Just like all the other releases, there are really great interviews, a video essay looking at the film, which is less conclusive as the others, which I enjoy since you can't really have a one take for this movie, I feel like. Of course, the cinema lesson with Kieslowski. We also get some documentaries about him, and actually a feature-length documentary where he himself discusses his life and his work. And then a look at the premiere of Red at the Cannes Film Festival, all of which are really fascinating, really well done, give you really great insight into Kieslowski. And then we also have the booklet, which we're going to finally get to the end of, where we have the essay from Georgina Evans about Red, which, just like the others, gives context for the film in terms of its place in history, analyzing it, and also is a really great memoriam in a way to Kieslowski at the end, and sort of discussing how this feels like the end of a director's career, sort of encompassing everything he ever discussed in his other films. You know, the idea of blind chance and fate, of these humanist universal themes, all that good stuff. And then what I think is the most interesting part about this booklet is this section, Kieslowski on the Three Colors, where it's taken from a book actually written by Dansuna Stock, I hope I said their name right, where Kieslowski just talks about his films. And the book was actually written before White and Red had been released, but Blue had. So Kieslowski talks about those films in more abstract senses, but he just sort of discusses in general what it was like to make these movies, what his goals were, and the struggles and achievements he had from this process. And it is just absolutely fascinating to get a look inside of Kieslowski's head, and it's really fun to hear him talk about these films and what his goals were, and to see just how well he achieved those goals while still leaving a lot of room for interpretation for people to read them on their own and consider what is trying to be said in those films, and just really shows the mind of a true master and a true artist. And then last but not least, we have a series of interviews with the cinematographers for each film, since each film had a different cinematographer. And they give their own take into what their goals were, what it was like to work with Kieslowski, especially in his tight, quick schedule. Again, just absolutely fascinating, which if you are a Kieslowski fan or you want to learn more about him, I think this box set is the way to go. This box set was my personal introduction to Kieslowski. And I feel like because of that, I have a greater appreciation for him. And while I've yet to watch many more of his films, I've watched Blind Chance, I've seen a couple of episodes of the Decalogue, I do consider him a really incredible director, a very emotional and humanist director, focused a lot on the senses, on feelings, on the small details, that, I don't know, makes cinema more interesting, makes films more fun to read and to watch and to get into, to dive into. And if you want an introduction to him, to world cinema, to deeper thinking with your movies, I think these are the way to go. And this really neat, tightly wound box set that clearly had a lot of love and care and just passion thrown into it, you know? It just gives these movies the respect and the care that they deserve, and is able to share them with the rest of the world. And I'm just so happy to be able to revisit these and talk about it with you guys. Either way, thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know what you think of the Three Colors trilogy. Did you like them? Do you hate them? What do you think about Kieslowski? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please like it. If you want more people to see it, please share it. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe, where next time we're going to be looking at a very special Criterion for me personally, which is 12 Angry Men, the first Criterion I ever bought. But either way, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.